going to give you a very unique reason as to why you should eat whole food from nature. You should do things that give you true reward in life, things that are hard, things that can motivate your mind and promote the release of brain chemicals in a natural, healthy way, and that whole food from nature is fantastic. These activities are fantastic, and it is not as simple as just stimulating the release of certain brain chemicals. You can stimulate the release of the same brain chemicals in different ways, and it has totally different effects on your brain and your health. A recent study done at the University of California, San Diego, showed a shared mechanism by which different drugs, such as PCP and methamphetamines. PCP people will take to get some hallucinations. It has an anesthetic effect. It's also known as angel dust is methamphetamine, and that's something that gets you all crazy. It's like cocaine on steroids, right? It has a much longer half-life than cocaine. Never do either of those, right? Of course. But they showed a shared mechanism by which they both cause what's called neurotransmitter switching. In other words, switching the types of brain chemicals that certain brain cells are releasing in certain brain regions. And more specifically, it was the medial prefrontal cortex. They were stimulating the switching from glutamate to GABA is what these neurons were releasing. Glutamate is the major excitatory neurotransmitter, and it's something that is involved in a lot of things, but also learning and memory, right? And then you have GABA, which is something that is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter or brain chemical that relaxes you, right? And there are many natural ways to stimulate the release of GABA, and this wasn't one of them, taking drugs like this. Now, interestingly, when they stimulated these neurons in another brain region called the ventral tegmental area, which is responsible for processing, learning, and memory. It's also a major hub where you produce dopamine, along with somewhere like the substantia nigra. So motivation and reward and pleasure, right? They stimulated these neurons with light optogenetic stimulation, is what it's called if you were curious. They saw the same neurotransmitter switching happen in the medial prefrontal cortex. So we're talking now in simple, when you're having drugs or some artificial stimulation that's not quite as natural, you are stimulating the switching of what brain chemicals these brain cells are releasing in a region of the brain that is responsible for a portion of processing, learning, and memory. And this is one reason that people that abuse drugs for a long time often have cognitive impairment, cognitive deficits, and memory deficits, right? And so we can do the same stimulation, we should say, with different things of a brain chemical, and it has a totally different effect. Look at the study at the University of Vanderbilt that we talked about maybe a few months back here at When Wellness, where those who were slackers, those who stimulated the release of dopamine with artificial, not healthy, lazy forms of lifestyle modification, released dopamine in different portions of the brain than those who were go-getters, right? Those who were go-getters released dopamine in portions of the brain responsible for feeling reward and motivation, right? And pleasure, and true pleasure. Right? And those who were slackers, they released dopamine in parts of the brain that were more responsible for emotion and risk perception, right? So they looked at the same things totally differently, did those who were slackers and those who were go-getters based on where the dopamine was being released in their brains based upon what they were doing. So what can we do that is natural and healthy to stimulate the proper release of these brain chemicals? Well, there's so many brain chemicals, but let's just focus on one here, dopamine, right? Dopamine makes you feel pleasure, motivation, reward, or emotion and risk perception, right? Depending on how you stimulate the release of it. And bad ways we'll start with to increase dopamine levels would be doing things like vaping, would be like taking drugs like alcohol, nicotine, would be amphetamines, would be things that give you like a rush, like drugs you take that give you a rush. It would be scrolling through Instagram all day. It'd be binge watching TV shows, all things that don't bring any true benefit to your life, things that you're kind of consuming. They give you immediate pleasure, right? We really quote that one because it's not true pleasure. and you're in no better place after. And in fact, you could be in a worse place. It could negatively even affect your memory, but later on in life, you didn't even think of that. But if you look at the mechanisms we were just talking about that they saw with these different drugs and how they could cause cognitive impairment and memory deficits later in life, you know that these are not good things to do. So how do you naturally stimulate the release of dopamine in good ways? And how can we relate this to health and lifestyle? Because I promise you guys we would tell you a unique way that you would want to eat healthy and be natural, live naturally and exercise and do good things. Right? Because that's what wellness is about. Well, exercise, getting more sleep, being less stressed, for sure. Meditation, music, mindfulness techniques, switching saturated fat to unsaturated fat in terms of what you're eating for the most part. And saturated fat doesn't cause heart disease, right? We know that. Now, over 20 meta-analyses have debunked that myth, but unsaturated fat is still king, and fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, tuna, herring, sardines, anchovies, trout. We talk all the time about why getting healthy fats is important for your brain, is important for your heart. Look at EPA and DHA, how they affect your brain, reducing inflammation in your brain, and they're components of your brain cell membranes, helping them to function better, producing brain chemicals naturally, right? And so eating healthy fats, protein is another one. But it's not just any sort of protein, it's protein from whole foods, right? Having a lot of good lean meat and other sources of health, and fish and seafood and pasture-raised eggs and all this great stuff, right? When we talk about healthy fats. Also, if you want a couple more examples, things like nuts and seeds, avocado, extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter, it's not your enemy, right? It doesn't have quite as much unsaturated fat, so more go for the aforementioned in the regard of unsaturated fat. But these types of things boost dopamine in a natural, healthy way. When you exercise and you release dopamine, and this video is not just about, really not at all about dopamine as much as we're talking about it, it's about the fact that you have to realize that stimulating the release of brain chemicals is not as simple as stimulating the release of brain chemicals. It's based on how you're stimulating the release of them. And when we do these drugs, if somebody's just like going to quickly Google, I'm releasing that when I do this, and I'm releasing that when I do this. Well, guys, you can't cheat the system, you can't cheat yourself, you can't cheat nature. And they have totally different effects, do the same brain chemicals with different stimuli. So stimulate the release of all these brain chemicals by doing healthy things, right? Mental and physical fortification, maybe read more. Meditating is fine. And look, meditation is increasing GABA, right? Gamma-aminobutyric acid. And that's the one we were talking about that. Wait a minute. These neurons, these brain cells, were switching over from glutamate to GABA. Shani, you just said that was bad. That was bad when it was stimulated with PCP and when it was stimulated with methamphetamines, right? But that's because it's not natural in that regard. It was stimulating brain cells that are not supposed to be releasing that at that time in that area to release that. But when you're doing these natural things and you're less stressed and you're getting more sleep, or even having natural foods, like green tea has L-theanine, that's GABAergic. Things that are high in magnesium and leafy greens and nuts and seeds and fatty fish and all this good stuff, you're also promoting the release of GABA, but in a totally different fashion and maybe in different parts of your brain. And so now it's serving its beneficial effect of helping you to relax, right? And you won't suffer cognitive impairment or memory deficits later in life. You don't have to memorize what any of these stupid drugs or anything like that. By the way, when they gave clozapine, which is an anti-hallucinogenic they give to people with schizophrenia, in this trial I was talking about at the University of California, San Diego, where they found a shared mechanism by which these different drugs, the PCP and the methamphetamines, were promoting neurotransmitter switching, right? Clozapine actually reduced those effects, actually reverse them, but you don't take clozapine to reverse them. You just live a natural, healthy lifestyle to never let it happen in the first place, right? To be prophylactic in a preventative sense, just approach your life in a healthy sense and prevent damage later on. You don't even have to understand why. So that's our passionate gist of the day. Another reason to eat healthy, whole food from nature. What with food, if you were curious, to exercise, to just, do things that are genuinely hard and rewarding, truly rewarding find joy in hard work. We always, quote Pearl S. Buck, to find joy in hard work is to discover the fountain of youth, right? I mean, this, it's really such a true quote. And I try to practice that myself, and I'm not perfect. I'm so far from perfect, obviously, right? I get better every day doing One Wellness because I have to research more and more and more and become a better healthcare provider, and I can help my patients to a greater degree. But I do my best to really try and find joy in hard work. And you know what? I don't even have to, I should have left out the word try, because I don't have to try, because I just feel great when I do things that are truly rewarding at this point, instead of bullshit that isn't going to help me later on. It's just going to give me some immediate pleasure, and things that are immediately pleasurable and easy to do, well, they're most often, they're not rare, they're not desirable, they're not truly beneficial. Cheating on a test, eating fast food, littering, even look at simple examples like that. They come back to haunt you later. Doing drugs. People do drugs. They think they take you away from what was a stressful reality, and they put you in a non-stressful reality. But the reality is, when you're doing these drugs, for the most part, almost always, they're taking you away from what was a non-stressful reality. Had you just taken care of what you had to take care of, what was in front of you, if you just did it, you would be fine, you would feel good. And you feel good while you're doing it, knowing you're doing something productive. And rather, they put you in a stressful non-reality, do the drugs, because then you come out of that non-reality and you're stressed again. You're in the same place. It's the same for eating processed food, fast food. It's quick, it's easy to get. You feel good. Maybe you're releasing that dopamine right away. Yummy, yummy. I don't feel as stressed anymore. What happens later? I look fat. I don't feel good. Whatever it is, it's not good to do things that are immediately pleasurable and easy to do. It's not good to try and stimulate a beneficial feeling in your mind and your body with artificial substances that are just not good for you. So, there you go. We gotta go. I gotta make Mass. Mom, coming now. Coming to Mass. I'll be there on time. Beast from the East, what's up? PH, Theodore Dillon. How you doing, my brother? Great to hear from you yesterday, man. I'll see you soon. Sabia, hello, baby girl. What's up? Happy Sunday. Play Mount Nature. I was going to say Saturday. It feels like Saturday. Yesterday was my Friday. It's the last day of work. But it's not. It's Sunday. Yuki Berto, back to work tomorrow, but we love it, so it's okay. Edward Tobolsky, Papa Alexis, and Marzi. Thanks for the support, you guys. I hope you got something out of this as for now. So we got for you, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, baby. Not sure where, not sure when, but we'll see you then. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much. Happy Sunday. Happy One Wellness. See ya. Go do something great for yourself.